the team. Thank you. I have fans. I have fans in the room. I'm working with the team that has put together this epic journey, and I want to very briefly welcome you here. Welcome our former presidents and great friends, Felipe González from Spain, big champion for Venezuelan democracy, and former Prime Minister of Greece, George Papandreou. Thank you for being here. Thank you for ambassadors and members of the international community. Thank you for the representatives of the US government, and thank you all my fellow Venezuelans for continuing to hope and continuing to fight in this epic journey. I want to bring to the podium Rafael de la Cruz, who has been a good friend for many, many years, and I'm very proud to introduce him. He is the person that coordinates the office of the María Corina Machado and Edmundo González Urrutia's office in Washington, D.C. And I thank you, Rafael, for everything that you do, and please welcome to the podium, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isadora, and thank you all to accompany us here today. The national anthem of Venezuela opens with this line: "Glory to the brave people, Gloria al bravo pueblo." This line celebrates men and women that fought in the 19th century for independence of the country and a good part of South America. The same opening is totally fit to celebrate the people of Venezuela who has been fighting for freedom for more than 25 years now. Freedom for the dictatorship that ruined the country, freedom from malign international actors that established their base of operation in Venezuela to destabilize the hemisphere. This fight has been increasingly isolating the regime and increasingly strengthening the democratic movement in Venezuela. Last October, we, the people, chose a woman, María Corina Machado, to lead our people to freedom, and Edmundo González Urrutia as our president. But this fight has consequences. Thousands of Venezuelans have been killed, imprisoned, or exiled. Some of the sons and daughters of these heroes are here now with us. Eugenia Olavarria, daughter of Magali Meda, please stand up. Stand up, stand up. Campaign manager, Asaili, in the Embassy of Argentina in Caracas. Santiago Rocha, please stand up. Donald Perkins Rocha, counselor and spokesperson of María Corina's Edmundo campaign, now in prison. Ana Corina Sosa. Ana Corina, please stand up. Daughter of María Corina Machado, leader and living in an undisclosed location in Venezuela right now. We Venezuelans are determined to get rid of this regime. It's our responsibility, nobody else. We will not falter. We will not rest until we achieve freedom. And now, it is my distinct honor to present to you the leader of the democratic movement of Venezuela, María Corina Machado. Please join me with a round of applause to receive her in this room.
Thank you. Thank you all.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm very honored, very excited to be with you today. And I want to thank you all for joining us in person and remotely. Only 7 weeks ago, on July 28th, a historic milestone in the Venezuela journey towards freedom happened, and it certainly has profound implications, not only for the pro-democratic movement in Venezuela, but in the world. Today, during this UN General Assembly, we're celebrating and paying tribute and our deepest gratitude to the millions of anonymous heroes of democracy, those millions and brave Venezuelans in our country and abroad who have opened this path to freedom through their courage and selfless commitment to an unprecedented feat of civic action and innovation. Thousands of them are in prison, hundreds are in hiding, many have been forced to leave. It's a tribute to all of them. Men and women of all ages who defeated hopelessness and demoralization, stood together and decided that united, we would liberate our country. These past weeks, we have felt the genuine admiration of our democratic peers worldwide, and this admiration is well-deserved. What was accomplished on July the 28th and the following days cannot be described as anything less of a heroic accomplishment. A truly impressive and bold triumph that sets a new benchmark for what organized, united citizens can achieve in the face of oppression and seemingly unsurmountable obstacles, not only for Latin America, but for the whole world. To have been part of this undertaking is for me the greatest honor of my life. I am deeply proud of being Venezuelan and to fight beside every single one of you. For 25 years, we have been preparing for this day. And along the way, we have stumbled, we have failed, we have committed mistakes. But every time we stood back up, learn, and continue. Today, I want to share with you the 3 key components that made this victory possible. First is trust. Over the past 2 years, we have managed to build true connections of trust among Venezuelans in a country that no longer believed in anyone, in anything. We had been morally disenfranchised, and all hope for a better future had been lost, to the point that over 25% of my compatriots have been forced to flee their country. We tirelessly crisscrossed the country many times around. I remember going to towns where a presidential candidate had last been there 40 or 45 years ago. We tore down walls that had been put to divide us. We heard each other. We embraced each other. We created a movement centered in values that we shared and a fully grassroots and homemade force built from the ground, from the periphery to the center, to the urban areas, and from the bottom up. We empowered and activated citizens to take back their power, to take ownership of their futures once again. And we also legitimized a political leadership through self-organized primaries that were 100% citizen-led. I cannot stress enough what an act of defiance this stands for. We rebelled against the system and created our own mechanisms of empowerment. Second, unprecedented organization and coordination. I cannot overstate the scale of the volunteer network we created and the operation. It is truly mind-blowing. Our 600K network, it is the most robust electoral defense force in our history. We had presence in over 99% of our polling stations, 89,000 witnesses, but in total, more than 1 million volunteers had specific tasks on July 28th. Over 3,500 training workshops were carried out in secret in people's living rooms and kitchens in common communities all over the country. 70,000 comanditos, which are small groups at the community level, were created, and they were critical in protecting and supporting all our electoral network. All this was doing united different stakeholders in civil society and political parties around the same goal. And third, innovation and technology. Yes, in a country that has slower internet than Haiti, we went all the way. And we did things different. We did them the Venezuelan way. First, we created an app coded by talented Venezuelan programmers, which had over 51,000 users reporting in real time what was happening in over 30,000 polling stations. On July 28th, we registered and documented over 117,000 data points so that we could know what was happening all day long, all around the country. Secondly, we studied voting patterns deeply on how the regime manipulates the voter registry. So we were able to come with a strategy of electoral intelligence plan that was designed to specially protect the 3,000 more critical polling stations in the country and equip them with specially trained personnel. Also, we equipped over 100 data processing centers with electrical generators, satellite internet, and high-resolution scanners. Those were specially geolocated within 1 hour of any single polling station in places where some had to cross rivers or ride in horsebacks in order to quickly transport and digitalize the official tally sheets that our electoral witnesses protected with their lives through the day of the 28th, through the night and the morning of the 29th. Thanks to the work of hundreds of thousands of volunteers, scanning physical tally sheets and sending QR codes through WhatsApp, we were able to prove the mathematical certainty of our victory in 24 hours after the polling stations closed. We published a search engine where any Venezuelan could input their ID and see the high-resolution scan of their own tally sheet. It obtained 130 million hits in the first 24 hours. People could actually see the tally sheet of the voting center. I cannot tell you how I felt when I saw my own. In 48 hours, we had published disaggregated results by state, municipality, county, and polling station for over 83% of all precincts. We then made the database public so that anyone could download and analyze the results. Today, it has been downloaded more than 5 million times, and over 20 reputable media outlets and institutions have stated the authenticity of our actas. In addition, there have been countless open source initiatives that have sprouted all around the internet and keep multiplying as we speak. The truth belongs to us, and it is an uncontrollable force that is undeniable and public. Recently, someone asked me, how come under unthinkable conditions we were able to accomplish something so remarkable? Bear this in mind. Neither myself or anyone in our teams were able to take flights, domestic flights. We had to travel by car, motorcycles, or even by canoes. Second, we didn't have any paid advertising, not $1, not one single campaign ad. People made their own posters with what they thought they felt, their own flyers. And campaign ads were absolutely organic, memes and songs and videos shared. through social media. The regime closed down or sanctions the hotels where we stayed, so we had to stay in private homes, hidden. Some of them were also persecuted. We could not buy food in the streets. They also closed along the routes all the gas stations, so we couldn't get to our destinations. So people hid gasoline in advance in strategic spots along the road so that we could fill up and keep going. Each time one of our core teams was persecuted and imprisoned, more and more volunteers stood up from all political parties to replace them and take over their tasks, while those who were in hiding or in asylum did their work remotely. So to this person who asked me what was the key to this marvel, I answered, if you want the scientific explanation, it was the Holy Spirit, because certainly this is a miracle achieved with the talent, dedication, courage, and love of our Venezuelan people. What we have accomplished is a very, very deep cultural transformation. Whoever thinks this is only an electoral struggle stays looking at the surface. If you look further, you will see this goes beyond. It is also an ethical struggle for the truth. It is an existential struggle for life, and it is a spiritual struggle for the good. That's why we will win, we will prevail. Venezuelans have never been stronger and more determined than today. Every day that passes by, our strength and determination grows. Venezuela will be free because we have a robust strategy, we have a legitimate leadership, and an unbeatable organization. We will prevail because of these millions of heroes of democracy to whom we pay tribute today. This is Venezuela. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maria Corina. Everyone here is very inspired and moved and admire of your words and the fight that you and millions of Venezuelans are giving on daily basis to prevail, to restore our democracy, to restore our freedom, and to have the nations that we deserve, that is to reunite our families. I'm going to share with you 3 questions that were made from people that are visiting us here. The first question is, as a mom, what does it mean for you to have your daughter here, the son of your colleague, Perkins Rocha, and the daughter of Magali here with us? Could you explain, as a mom, what does that mean, and specifically also on the human side of persecution and migration?
Hi, David. It's very hard to talk about this because on one hand, I feel so proud of them. I feel very proud of their parents. There are thousands of Venezuelan children around the world that are missing very important moments of their families, moments that will never come back. But I'm very proud because they have stepped up and talked and decided to talk to defend their country. I have to say that sometimes I feel guilty as well because we have taken a lot from them. We're doing this, we've made this decision of life for them and for every single Venezuelan, but at the same time, they do pay a very high cost. But at the end, I hope at the end of our lives that our kids will say it was worthwhile and they will have a country that they will be very proud of.
Another question, are you willing to have a real negotiation with the regime if that means that Venezuelans can achieve a democratic transition?
Absolutely. Edmundo González, who is the president-elect, and I have been very clear in that sense. Someone asked me recently if we believe the regime is willing to negotiate, and I said not yet. Because we need to reach a point in which the cost of staying in power is higher than the cost of leaving power for the regime. And we're not there yet. That cost is growing every day that goes by. It grows by the force, the strength, the oppression of our citizen movement, both Venezuela and our marvelous diaspora, but it also increases as the world lets them know that they will be held accountable for their crimes. And this is an unbearable situation. No stability could come to the regime or the region. So every day that day goes by and Maduro prolongs this agony means more and more Venezuelans that cross our borders, more drugs that reach the US and Europe, more arms that come from foreign tyrannies, and more destabilization and pain for our society. So we need to move fast. We've never had as much legitimacy and strength as we do today. Maduro is more and more isolated every day, and I'm sure he will realize at a point that it is in his best interest to did not sit down and negotiate a transition with us.
Thank you. The last question is, what would you like to see from the international community during the next month? And if you think that the governments have done enough since July 28th?
Well, I think we have had enormous support in the last days. I think the world already all know the truth. Nobody doubts that Edmundo won by a landslide. And the reactions to Maduro unleashing this wave of repression has been huge. Just last week, we saw in Geneva, the High Commissioner of Human Rights, as well as the fact-finding mission, showing, horrible reports or FIF reports, and over 60 countries supported it. And I'm sure that this week at the United Nations General Assembly, we will see unprecedented support for our cause. Several parliaments around the world, Colombia, Chile, Costa Rica, República Dominicana, and the European Parliament have recognized Edmundo as president-elect. And I do expect that all these countries, Western democratic and all around democratic governments, recognize Edmundo as well as president-elect. And in parallel, we need to make the regime understand that they will not have midterm financial stability, and that the cost of repression increase systematically. So I think we are moving in the right direction. Our allies are clear what is our strategy. As I said before, we have a strong strategy. We have a united leadership, not only in Edmundo and myself. We're working together, he promoting and receiving all support around the world, and doing it inside Venezuela, but also all the political parties of the opposition have come together and stronger than ever. And we have all of you who support our cause, people that have turned Venezuela in like their own cause. We don't only want to reach out to governments, we want to reach out to societies, to people all over the world who understand how Venezuela should be a priority for them as well. Loving, freedom-loving and democracy-loving people all around the world. And we're moving and achieving that. So we will prevail. Venezuela will be free. Political prisoners will be free. And our children will come back.
Thank you, Maria Corina. Definitely, when we conquer a democratic transition in Venezuela, it will be a victory for every democratic and freedom fighter across the world. Well, now we'll have here on the floor, Carlos Blanco, who is a member of the strategic team of the Venezuela presidential campaign. Thank you.
Gracias, David. Presidente González, Presidente Papandreou, Dan Erickson, Brian Nichols, Josh Morris, all representatives of the US government, all ambassadors, and thank all of you for being here. We won, and we will make our victory count. Edmundo González will be the president of Venezuela on January 10th. We will not let the regime's brutal and relentless repression overshadow our accomplishments. We have achieved several consecutive key objectives. As María Corina, our querida María Corina, mentioned. The primary, the victory of July 28th, the proof of victory with the official records in hand, the expansion of an international movement for freedom, transcending ideological positions, the existence of a popular conviction in the victory within Venezuelans, an unexpected and functional partnership between María Corina and Edmundo González Urrutia. Meanwhile, the regime is internationally isolated, nationally within the territory, repudiated, and also repudiated by the Venezuelan diaspora. It is that regime in a process of decomposition. It is fragmenting. It is in decay. And as its institutional resources deplete, it relies on direct police repression and judicial repression. Institutional avenues to uphold popular sovereignty are exhausted. The National Electoral Council, regime's National Assembly, Supreme Court of Justice, and Attorney General's office are clearly, for everyone, instruments of Maduro. There are no institutions to appeal to. What remains is to uphold popular sovereignty, is what we have. Popular sovereignty as the last resort of our movement. Which are our current goals? First of all, push for the regime's recognition of the electoral victory. We all know they don't want to do that, but we have to keep pushing to oblige the regime to do that, to recognize Edmundo González Urrutia's victory. And then we have a deadline. January the 10th is the day in which Edmundo González will become the president of Venezuela, which is our strategy: to stand firm in the demand that the popular sovereignty expressed on July 28th must be respected. We're not backing from that. We're not negotiating that victory. Internationally, we think we should move from the verification of the records asked for many to the recognition of the victory of Edmundo González Urrutia as president-elect of Venezuela. it is going to be necessary to go to the streets again in a more intelligent, imaginative way, so as to halt the regime's repression. The military and police forces are obliged to respect the popular mandate. Our political direction right now to foster an internal resistance dynamic and prevent further detentions. This means leaders at all levels have to sometimes go underground because the repression that we all know is happening in Venezuela. We need to expand the coalition of parties beyond what led to the electoral victory. Now, the process that is being led by María Corina and Edmundo González is including all the parties, all the groups, even those that didn't participate with us in the electoral campaign, and advance negotiations with the regime as quickly as possible to get done the mandate of Venezuelans in the elections, which is to have Edmundo González Urrutia in the presidency of the country next January 10th. We won. We won't give up. We'll have freedom and democracy at the dawn of the 2025 year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos, and thank you everyone for being here. Ambassador Nichols, Dan Erickson, former President González, Papandreou, all of you, thanks for being here. Jason, members of the diplomatic community, members of the, don't worry, Carlos, member of the think tank community, Ambassador Abdallah, all of you, thanks for being here. It's my honor now to start the panel of Heroes of Democracy. This is a panel to honor and pay tribute to millions of Venezuelans who have struggled and have endured the worst repression inside of the country. We have with us today, and before introducing you, I will give a short story about what is happening on that side of the room. Because while politicians, diplomats, and everyone are here, daughters and sons of leaders are in that corner of the room and are listening. Mom talking from clandestinity. Another mom is following this event through the Zoom link because right now is a refugee in an embassy in Caracas while the regime is trying to detain her. And one dad is not able to listen what we are talking today because while we are here, he's a political prisoner of the regime. The first call I received on July 28 was a call at 6 a.m. And that call was my mom and my grandma from Caracas. They were crying and they called me to say that they were voting for me. And I say, Mom, I'm not on the ballot. It's Edmundo, the one you have to vote. They said, not for you like you, Dom. Voting for you because we want you here. We want you in the country. We want us to be together. And that is the driver of this movement, being able to be together. So without further ado, I want to introduce Eugenia Olavarria, daughter of Magali Meda, the chief of Com Venezuela campaigning team. Santiago Rocha, son of Perkins Rocha, our national witness to the Electoral Council on July 28 and part of the legal team of the campaigning team. And María Corina Machado, daughter of María Corina Machado, leader of the Venezuelan opposition. Checking here. Well, I will start with Eugenia. We are going to go in that order, Eugenia, Santiago, and María Corina. I don't want to make what usually moderators does in these kind of things, that is provocative questions and that kind of thing. This is already a hard situation and a hard context. And I believe that the best thing we can do is, before starting this, is honoring with an applause to their moms, their dads, and also to them, because they are a big testimony of bravery. We'll start with you, Eugenia. I will give you the floor, and you are free to say whatever you want to say to this audience and to the international community that is listening to us right now.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Hola a todos. Gracias por estar aquí. Es un honor y it's a great honor, and I am extremely grateful to be the daughter of my mother and to be here to talk to you about what has been going on for quite some time. Actually, she describes this whole process as a birth, giving birth to a country that hasn't been for 8 months in the womb. It's been for more than a decade. She has given her entire life to this cause for very deeply personal reasons. In my lifetime, we have seen many elections, and we have lost hope for democracy. We have lost faith because we have seen the deterioration of institutions in our own eyes. Voter turnout this 2024 reached an all-time peak. Call it hope, call it faith, call it trust, but I call it perseverance, because they have worked. And what happened today is proof of that, what has happened. We faced our fears, we voted. I didn't vote because I became a refugee not long ago. And that's part of the sacrifice you have to endure when you flee your country. If you work in politics, you are risking your life. You are in danger of being kidnapped by uniformed men with hooded faces and no name tag. My mother is in a sanctuary, uncomfortable sanctuary of protection, but still not being granted her due rights of diplomacy. She is innocent. She is being called a terrorist. She is not a terrorist. The only terror that my mother has ever caused is the fear of losing her. She and her 5 colleagues are there. They're all innocent, as well as all political prisoners who are disappeared, and it's not only torture to them in conditions that are so inhumane. I'd rather not go into that, but it's also torture to the family members who have to run around the country to try to find and localize their family members. So they are in the embassy enduring the pain of having far too many colleagues in jail, disappeared, como Gavito, Perkins, Deynora, Henry, Biallo, Luis, Maria, and so many others kidnapped and disappeared. They're facing one of the outcomes of speaking out against an autocratic oligarchy that has weaponized institutions that are supposed to represent the people. They blame her and her colleagues for the organization of a massive mobilization and decision that the Venezuelans took the 28th of July that firmly rejected the so-called Socialist Party controlling and dominating all institutions and isolating the country. A failed state with record-breaking economic failure where only those who show loyalty to the regime live in extreme luxury. What my mother actually did was the impeccable job of reminding Venezuelans their electoral rights. Number 1, every party is allowed for witnesses. Number 2, all voters are allowed to stay until the end of election day in their voting centers to see the results of their voting centers. And number 3, witnesses are allowed to keep a tally sheet, a proof, las actas. Witnesses are allowed to keep this proof. Witnesses protected this with their lives. They risked their lives, and some of them are disappeared to keep this proof and to digitalize it and to be able to show it to the world. With discipline, honesty, resilience, the most beautiful and elegant protection of civil right to vote was made a reality the 28th of July. I am 25 years old as the Chavez regime. I didn't vote. And why? Well, university professors like my father, who did it because of devotion, because the salaries of a teacher, better not mention it, pure devotion, had to deal with young men and women who are borderline depressed and about to endure dairén and horrible conditions to flee the country. Young men like my brother who were kidnapped and held for ransom by the police, who are underpaid. The harassment that Vente and many other parties endured during electoral campaign was unprecedented, punishing and fining any restaurant, hotel, or person who helped María Corina along the way, blocking roads, stealing equipment. Nonetheless, they traveled the country by land, as you heard, hugging broken families, hugging abandoned children as their parents look for an income somewhere else, and reminding those who are old enough what a democratic Venezuela is, because we used to have that in some point I never knew. And yes, before we did have social economic discrepancies, there was a gap, but between that gap, there was a bridge of opportunities, there was respect, there was progress, and that bridge was burnt down and left to rot, as the Venezuelan institutions have. And today is our life mission to reconstruct it again and to be part. My mother likes to say, and it's very true, doing politics is not a crime, and winning elections is not a crime. And many Venezuelans in exile wish to come back. I wish to come back. I wish to be with my family, and my mother deserves to be in her home. She deserves so much more. And yeah, we want to take care of Venezuela. We want to go back. We want to welcome you all in this beautiful country. So, I know, Ma, ¿estás escuchando? Estoy tan orgullosa de ti. Estoy tan orgullosa de todos ustedes. De verdad, qué hermoso lo que se ha logrado en Venezuela. It's really, it's the proof of the beauty of the country and its people, the dedication of those 6 people in the embassy, and I just want to say thank you. Gracias, Ma, gracias, Vente, gracias, María Corina, gracias a Edmundo, gracias a todos los partidos políticos, gracias a toda la trayectoria que se ha hecho. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Genia. Thank you. Now, it's my honor to introduce Santiago Rocha. Santiago is the son of Perkins Rocha, who is part of the legal team of the campaign, but also was our national witness to the Electoral Council on the night of July 28. So, Santiago, the floor is yours.
Bueno, mi discurso es en español porque creo que quiero que mi papá lo escuche. y a él el inglés no se le da muy bien, lamentablemente. Entonces, mi padre, Perkins Rocha, hombre de familia, honesto, honorable, amoroso, abogado, ex magistrado, testigo por parte de los ciudadanos venezolanos ante el CNE en las elecciones presidenciales, asesor legal del partido Evento Venezuela y el Comando con Venezuela. Fue secuestrado el pasado 27 de agosto por fuerzas de represión del régimen venezolano al salir de una farmacia en Caracas. Fue empujado, golpeado y arrastrado hacia uno de sus vehículos y llevado en contra de su voluntad. Posiblemente ni siquiera ellos sabían en ese momento la condición médica especial que tiene mi padre, que es la de que tiene una válvula en el cerebro que está conectada a una manguera que baja hacia el estómago y cualquier golpe o forcejeo que le hagan puede resultar en traducirse en resultados fatales para mi papá y su salud. Horas posteriores a su secuestro, personas encapuchadas entraron a nuestra casa sin ningún tipo de orden, sin haber nadie presente, y se robaron objetos de trabajo de mi padre, como documentos, computadoras y además objetos personales de nuestra familia. Al día siguiente, mediante un mensaje de texto, nos pudimos enterar que se le había hecho una audiencia express en el helicoide, en el centro de detención del helicoide en Caracas, en la cual se le negó la posibilidad de optar por un abogado de su confianza que velase por sus intereses. Y se le puso un abogado del Estado. En esa audiencia se le presentaron los cargos de instigación al odio, conspiración, asociación para delinquir, terrorismo y traición a la patria. A mi padre, que está dando su vida y su libertad por la patria. Desde el 27 de agosto se nos ha impedido tener algún tipo de contacto directo con él para conocer su estado de salud físico y mental, ya que el personal del helicoide nos dice que está en un periodo de adaptación. En ese momento me pregunto yo, ¿adaptación a qué? ¿A la tortura? ¿Al aislamiento total? ¿Adaptación a qué? Lo muy triste de esta historia es que, de la historia de mi padre, es que no es un caso único y aislado. Es un hecho recurrente que pasa todos los días en Venezuela. Como él, secuestrados se encuentran personas honorables, como Américo de Gracia, Piaggio Pilieri, Dignor Hernández, Henry Alviares, Williams Dávila, Freddy Superlano, Antonio Sequea, Fernando Noya, Alejandro González, Ricardo Albacete, María Oropesa, Gabo y miles de presos políticos. En Venezuela, la violación de los derechos fundamentales humanos ya es una práctica común del régimen, que no ve personas, sino fichas de canje para negociaciones. Y la verdad es que al momento de convertirse en un preso político, una persona, su familia también es rehén. Todos sufrimos por igual. Sufro por la integridad física de mi madre en Caracas, la cual se expone todos los días ante los organismos del Estado para intentar asegurar el bienestar de mi padre. La represión en Venezuela y la política de terrorismo de Estado es en todas las direcciones y en contra de todos los venezolanos que piensan distinto y que quieren una mejor Venezuela. Porque actualmente todos somos privados de libertad. Porque estar libre, entre comillas, pero resguardado forzadamente como María Corina, como Guanipa, como Delsa, no es estar libre. Porque estar fuera de nuestro país, como Antonio Ledesma, David Smolansky, el presidente electo, Edmundo González, y que se nos niegue la posibilidad de volver, no es estar libre. Porque estar asilados en una embajada bajo tratos inhumanos, como Magali, como Macero, Urruchurtu, Villalobos, Mótola, González, no es estar libre. Porque querer decir lo que piensas y no poder decirlo por temor a las represalias, no es estar libre. Todos los venezolanos sufrimos de haber sido privados de nuestra libertad, porque la libertad no es a medias, la libertad es completa. O es toda o es nada. Los más de 7 millones de venezolanos que pudieron votar en las elecciones y los más de 8 millones que estamos en el exilio hemos decidido que ya basta, que queremos un cambio y que la libertad es de todos y para todos, y no solo para una cúpula. Yo no he perdido la fe, los venezolanos no hemos perdido la fe. Esta sensación de libertad tan tangible y hermosa que sentimos es algo a lo cual no estamos dispuestos a renunciar. Como dijo mi padre, vamos a hacer cumplir la libertad de los venezolanos hasta con nuestras vidas. No nos derrumbamos, los venezolanos nos tenemos y ahora más que nunca estamos más fuertes. Porque esto es hasta el final.
Gracias, Santiago. Muchas gracias, hermano. Thanks, Santiago. And now we'll introduce Ana Corina Machado, daughter of María Corina Machado, the leader of the Venezuelan Democratic Forces. Ana Corina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, bear with me because I was planning to do this in Spanish, but I'm going to do it in English because I think it's important to spread the word abroad and across the globe. I think the scale and magnitude of the repression of Nicolás Maduro and the Chavista regime has been evidenced. In the case of my family, it's lasted for more than 2 decades now. And to be honest, it's always hard for me to talk about my personal story or my family's personal story because we're just one in millions of Venezuelan families that have witnessed firsthand the weight of the dictatorship in Venezuela. But I've come to realize that it is important to unveil just how cruel this dictatorship is and give color and a face to their repression. So I'm going to share a personal story, and I'm going to go all the way back to 2012, which is a moment in time in my life that I share with millions of Venezuelans, which is the time I had to leave my country. This was in the middle of a very tense electoral year, 2012, and I was in the middle of my university career degree in Venezuela. And at that point, my mother's security team requested a meeting with both of us, and it was made very clear that I had to leave the country immediately if my mother wanted to continue being the face against the brutal dictatorship. My brothers and I could no longer remain in Venezuela. And as many Venezuelans sadly understand this very well, that was a very painful moment of having to leave your country behind, your life, your family, starting from scratch. And I felt very guilty because I felt like I was abandoning her in her fight. But I moved to the US. And many months later, I remember I was studying for my finals exams, and my phone starts vibrating. I start receiving a lot of messages at the same time, and I get an incoming call from someone from my mother's team. And at that point, my heart just stopped. I knew something wasn't right. And, you know, that makes you realize what us Venezuelans have to live through. We just carry a sense of anguish constantly with us. Those of us who have families back home know what the regime is capable of doing and are in constant fear that we're going to get a call with bad news. And I pick up the phone and she says, I want you to stay calm. Your mother is safe now. She's okay. And those are reassuring words that no child wants to hear. And I say, please tell me what happened. This was in April 2013, in the middle of a parliamentary session. Parliamentarians from the Chavista regime physically assaulted the opposition parliamentaries, including my mother. She was beaten to the ground, carried through the floor, kicked in her face until it was destroyed, and she had to be hospitalized. And at that time, I was lucky I could go back to Venezuela. I took the first plane that I was able to and went to see her. And frankly, that was one of the hardest moments of my life, seeing her in bed, immobile, her face destroyed. She could barely speak. And as a child, all I wanted to do was cry out of frustration, anger. You know, it was the first time I could really witness what the dictatorship was capable of doing and how far they were able and willing to reach. And all I wanted to ask her was to stop. Enough, please. You know, I wanted to protect her. But something within me understood the magnitude of what was at stake. It was far greater than me as her child or my mother as my mother. You know, we were fighting for the freedom of an entire nation. And I still don't know how I kept my tears to myself. And I held her hand. I had the courage to tell her, you have to keep going. And we'll be here to support you in every step of the way. And what follows, you know, I think, well, in some measure, she hasn't been able to leave the country for 10 years, and she's now in hiding. And there's not a moment in my life that I don't fear for her safety. But we have been lucky, I guess, in a way, because you know her and you know her story well. And that has, in some measure, protected her from the degree with which what the government can do to her at no cost. But that is not the case for millions of other Venezuelans. And as you've heard, there's thousands of anonymous heroes that have not had the same luck. Since the 28th of July, almost 2,000 Venezuelans have been detained, disappeared, imprisoned, killed. Of those, 226 are women and 60 are minors, which is the case of Jose David Crespo, who was 14 years old, 14, when he was detained along his father on the 30th of July. Or Emil Castellanos, a woman who suffers from lupus and has a kidney infection. She was detained on the 6th of August in Carabobo and has no access to medicine, which is a human right. And so is the story of many others. And as I speak now, it almost sounds helpless, the cost, insurmountable dictatorship with support from very bad actors, as you know, in the global sphere. But when I meet people like Santiago and Eugenia, I'm filled with hope because I see that unbreakable spirit that is so characteristic of us Venezuelans. Our generation has been stripped of so much. We've been robbed from the opportunity of growing up back home. We've been stripped from the opportunity of spending Christmas with our families, and in many cases, including mine, from burying our grandparents who have grown old while we live abroad. We are taken away the chance to speak our minds and get informed, communicate with each other, because they close down social media and channels, news channels in Venezuela. Some of us have been stripped of their freedom, and far too many have been robbed of their own lives. But they will never take away our dream of living in freedom, our hope of going back to Venezuela again and get reunited with our families. And us as a generation have such big responsibility for rebuilding our country, regaining our future. And I am convinced more than ever, and every time I meet people like the two of you, I become, more grounded in the fact that we remain more firm than ever before to gain back our freedom and respect the sovereignty of our country, which is the majority of the people what we want. So thank you for having us, and please stay with us in this moment.
Thank you. And I want everyone to give another round of applause to the three of them. Thank you for being with us today. And thank you for enduring everything you are enduring. Thank you. I also want to say hi, and sorry that I forgot in the previous round, to Jenny Lincoln from the Carter Center. And on behalf of all the Venezuelan people, to say thank you for the effort you did during our elections, observing everything that happened on the ground. Now is the time to give the floor to the international community. Us Venezuelans, we know pretty well how important is international support of our struggle. We have done a lot. We are keep doing everything that we have to do. And we hope the international community to join us in this effort and to keep walking this path to freedom with us. I want to introduce first to Ambassador Brian Nichols from the US. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and that was such a powerful panel. And when we in the international community think about what it is that we are obligated to do, we are not Venezuelans, this is not our country. Listening to the powerful testimony of the leadership of the democratic movement and Maria Corina Machado, and listening to the children who have sacrificed so much on behalf of freedom and democracy, along with their parents and family members and millions of Venezuelans. Our commitment as an international community, I think, is threefold. One, not to allow this issue to be obscured by a false dialogue, be obscured by a lack of action by the international community. We have to work together as an international community to shine a spotlight on the situation in Venezuela. We have to work as an international community to talk about the basic fundamental freedoms that peoples of all nations enjoy. And we have to talk about the incredibly well documented abuses that are going on in Venezuela right now. It is incumbent upon us to narrow the space that those who would violate the basic freedoms of their citizens have. And it is incumbent upon us to work together for the progress and freedom that will positively impact the Venezuelan people, as well as our entire hemisphere. Obviously, there are Venezuelan refugees throughout our hemisphere. Millions of people have been driven into exile. And when we hear Eugenia and Sebastian and Corina talk about their time in exile, it reminds me that it is incumbent upon all of us to treat migrants and refugees humanely and with dignity as part of our efforts to respond to this crisis. I want to note that it is not just yours truly who's here from the United States government. This is a priority issue for us. My dear friend and colleague, Michael Camilleri from USAID is here, and he's directing the programs that support the efforts to build democracy in Venezuela. I'm here with Dan Erickson, my colleague from the National Security Council, who leads the interagency efforts in this regard. All of us are, yes, applaud Dan. All of us and many other colleagues are here. That's because of the priority that we place on this issue. We are not going to stop working to build an international consensus in favor of democracy, to work to build a path forward to democratic governance in Venezuela, and to work to see a Venezuela where people have the right to determine their own future, free from persecution, free from suffering. Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Now I want to invite to take the floor our distinguished representative of the Canadian delegation. Come here.
Thank you, everybody. It's an honor to be here today, to have the chance to hear such poignant testimonies. Thank you to all three of you. I'm delivering today remarks for Canada. My ambassador, Michael Gore, Deputy Permanent Representative of Canada to the UN, had to step out. It's important that Canada be here and deliver remarks. I will be speaking on his behalf today. It is an honor to be here alongside courageous Venezuelans who are actively advocating for their civic and political rights in fighting for the return of democracy in Venezuela. Today, almost 2 months after the July 28th presidential election, Maduro authorities are trying to create a fait accompli. But in the absence of evidence to point to a win by Maduro, it is clear that these actions are fraudulent. On the contrary, the actas gathered by Venezuelans in independent analysis by credible sources such as the UN panel of experts and the Carter Center all point to a win for Edmundo González. It is Edmundo González who appears to have received the most votes, and in that regard, Canada does not recognize Maduro, a position it has taken since he started his illegitimate mandate in 2019. We continue to demand that the democratic will of the Venezuelan people be respected. The repression of Venezuelans at the hands of Venezuelan authorities must stop. Venezuelan authorities think that the international community will eventually turn a blind eye to the human rights violations happening in Venezuela. We won't. Canada unequivocally condemns the ongoing and escalating repression in Venezuela, particularly in the aftermath of the presidential elections. The use of repressive tactics to create a climate of fear and intimidation, to persecute and harass dissenters and the political opposition in Venezuela must stop. The continued shrinking of civic and democratic space in Venezuela, including with the recent approval of the so-called anti-NGO law, massive arrest of protesters and dissenters, and the forcing of Edmundo González into political exile do not bode well for human rights and democracy in Venezuela. Canada deplores these acts, and we will continue to work with the international community to hold accountable those responsible for human rights violations and crimes against humanity. We believe the International Criminal Court has a critical role to play in addressing these grave injustices. We will also continue our ongoing efforts to the UN Human Rights Council, notably to renew the mandates on Venezuela of the fact-finding mission in the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights. In closing, these are, once again, challenging times for Venezuelans. Let me reiterate my admiration for the ongoing peaceful mobilization of Venezuelans around the world who continue to call on their rights and will, as expressed at the polls, be respected. Canadá ha apoyado y seguirá apoyando al pueblo de Venezuela y su deseo de vivir en una sociedad pacífica y democrática. Gracias. Thank you.
Now I want to invite the honorable member of the Italian Congress and member of the Committee of Foreign Relations, Honorable Deborah Bergamini. The floor is yours.
Buonasera a tutti. Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting us. I want to greet all of you also on the part of our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Vice President of the Council of Ministers, Minister Antonio Tajani. My name is Deborah Bergamini. I'm a member of the Italian Congress, have been for a long time. And my presence here is to state that we will be next to the Venezuelan people for all the future until they get back to democracy. We condemn in the strongest terms the regime of Maduro, and we want to let you know that our proximity really to Venezuelan people is heartfelt.
We consider Venezuela a brother country. There are over 2 million citizens in Venezuela of Italian origin. Many of them had to flee away from their country, and I'm really touched by the words of Eugenia, Santiago, Ana, and really I believe that María Corina Machado and all the people around her are epic heroes for democracy. And I want really to say that we all admire them. And the international community will be close and will keep the pressure against Maduro. The Italian government and the Italian parliament have been very vocal in the last months in order to keep the attention of all the world, because we consider Venezuela an international watershed for democracy, rule of law, right of voting, right of expressing the will of the people, and for personal integrity as a global value. And this is why we are striving together. I want you to know that within the Italian parliament, there has been a huge debate. We have passed a number of resolutions in order to condemn the Maduro regime, in order to be always close to the Venezuelan people. Another resolution will be voted next week. We hosted with a very important meeting at the Chamber of Deputies with many people that told us what was going on in Venezuela. And that has been very, very relevant for the public opinion. I want all of you to know that Italy, as part of the international community, is strong and active beside you. Thank you very much.
Now, as the last speaker of the international part, we agreed that we are going to change to Spanish. Porque nos va mejor en este idioma. Quiero presentar ahora al embajador de Uruguay ante la OEA, buen amigo de la casa, Washington Abdala.
I prefer in Spanish. I think it's better. No, because you know when you speak in your language, you have more specific expressions, and I think it's better when you speak in your language. Sorry for the people who speak only English. Y es la única manera de hablar porque estos eventos no son fáciles y es absolutamente imposible mezclar lo que tiene que ver con la parte de la emoción que transita por el eje de los que están sufriendo, lo cruel que están sufriendo con el régimen, después hacer un análisis sobre cómo vemos la reconquista democrática y pensar con sigilo en términos políticos. Si ustedes creen que todo esto es fácil de combinar, yo digo que es imposible. Creo que es muy difícil. Entonces uno ahí lo único que puede hacer es hablar con el corazón y con el sentimiento. Yo vengo de un país que recuperamos la democracia hace unos cuantos años y donde penosamente transitamos la oscuridad de la noche autoritaria. Así que no tenemos ninguna autoridad, simplemente pasamos por ese túnel del tiempo y tenemos una idea del sacrificio y el dolor que eso implica. Y cuando se maneja esa dimensión, las expresiones políticas pueden llegar a ser delicadas, muy delicadas. Cuando nos convocamos a la reconquista democrática, que es el imperativo moral y es lo que tenemos que hacer, hay que poner mucho sigilo y mucha inteligencia, porque tenemos que cuidarnos entre todos en esa reconquista en la que estamos. Acá hay cosas simples. El soberano en Venezuela ya habló, el pueblo ya dictó sentencia. El tema es cómo hacemos para que esa sentencia el 10 de enero se consolide. Y yo les doy algunas impresiones. Cada uno en su lugar, cada uno en su ubicación, es el todo. No hay derecho a aflojar ni un centímetro en la batalla por la recuperación democrática de Venezuela. Ni un centímetro. Y créanme que eso se hace desde todos y cada uno de los terrenos. Se hace desde el terreno diplomático, ejerciendo la presión y montando la narrativa específica y concreta. Se hace el terreno desde los gobiernos, con sigilo, con atención, con los mecanismos bidireccionales que tienen los gobiernos. Se hace desde el terreno de la comunicación. Esos teléfonos que están todos por allí informan y vehiculizan y traccionan de una manera que es increíble. Se hace desde la denuncia, desde lo que estos chiquilines hoy cuentan acá de sus padres. Es muy impactante. Eso, cuando se sabe y se masifica, no permite dualidad, o del lado de la defensa de los derechos humanos o del lado de la crueldad. No hay opción. No crean que haya opción. Qué bien lo dijiste, Perkins. Qué bien dijiste esa frase que te salió naturalmente. La libertad no tiene intermediación. La libertad o es toda o es nada. Y esa es la batalla en la que estamos. Esa es la batalla en la que estamos. No es una batalla retórica, no es una batalla filosófica, es una batalla por la reconquista de los derechos, el Estado de Derecho, la democracia y la defensa de la soberanía de un país. Que somos todos. Termino con esto. Mi abuelita siempre, mi abuelo siempre contaba una anécdota y decía, mire, mi hijo, en la vida hay que ser bueno, porque es lo que corresponde ser bueno, ser buena persona. Pero además le voy a explicar, es lo que conviene. Conviene ser bueno, porque al bueno le hacen bien las cosas y le va bien. Y yo digo esto, los que no le ponen atención a Venezuela no entienden que Venezuela, además de que somos todos, si Venezuela eclosiona, los efectos de la eclosión de Venezuela siguen esparciéndose sobre todos lados. Y son dramáticos. Y yo me peleo con los amigos que hablan de la migración y digo desplazamiento forzado. Gente que se ve obligada a retirarse de su país a empujones porque ya no tiene más espacio en su país. Entonces, o por un lado o por el otro, no tenemos opción. Hasta el final. Hasta el final.
Muchas gracias, embajador Abdallah. We are about to close today's event. Before giving the floor to the final messenger of today, I want to thank again to people that is not in this room, to Magali, to Fernando, to Omar, to Humberto, to Claudia, to Pedro Ruchurtu, that is also part of this team, and every day is working from that place and doing everything to have freedom in Venezuela. A last round of applause, and we want you to know that this is also for you in the embassy. Now we have a final speaker of today, and it's a brief remark of our president-elect, Edmundo González Urrutia.
En medio de condiciones dolorosamente adversas, los venezolanos aceptamos el reto de ir a unas elecciones presidenciales y competimos con las reglas que nos impusieron jugando en su propio terreno. Además de la inhabilitación arbitraria e injustificada de diversos candidatos,
incluyendo a la ganadora de las primarias de octubre pasado, María Corina Machado, tuvimos también que enfrentar restricciones de todo tipo. Así, por ejemplo, se impidió votar libremente a muchos nuevos votantes y a la inmensa mayoría de nuestros compatriotas en el exterior. Se nos cerraron casi todas las puertas en las emisoras de radio y de televisión de cobertura nacional. Se hostigó a muchas de las personas que nos ayudaron de diversos modos durante la campaña, bien sea aportando equipos de megafonía, brindando alojamiento o simplemente vendiendo empanadas. Se encarceló a buena parte de los líderes de nuestros comandos estadales, mientras que la mitad del Comando Nacional fue detenida o tuvo que asilarse en la Embajada Argentina en Caracas. A pesar de todo, los venezolanos nos organizamos para cumplir las tareas específicas antes, durante y después de la jornada electoral. Desde los testigos hasta los miembros de mesa, pasando por casi 70.000 comanditos por todo el país, más de 1 millón de ciudadanos cumplieron las funciones necesarias para derrotar electoralmente a la dictadura. Gracias a esos notables esfuerzos de organización, la voluntad de los ciudadanos no solo venció la expresión estatal y expresarse el día de las elecciones, sino que además fuimos capaces de probar los resultados reales muy distintos a los que atropelladamente ofreció el Consejo Nacional Electoral. Nuestros testigos recaudaron casi el 84% de las actas, logrando ponerlas de inmediato a disposición del mundo entero para su verificación imparcial. Nuestra victoria es tan evidente y transparente como lo son las actas recopiladas, todas de carácter oficial. La dictadura, sin embargo, se niega a reconocer su derrota. En vez de obrar conforme a la Constitución y facilitar una transición pacífica, se dedica más bien a desatar una brutal oleada de persecución política. En menos de 3 semanas fueron retenidas alrededor de 2.400 personas. Entre esos miles de detenidos se encuentran testigos que participaron durante la jornada del 28 de julio, líderes de nuestros comandos regionales, militantes de partidos políticos, activistas, periodistas, más de 200 mujeres y más de 150 niños y adolescentes. Una gran cantidad de ellos fueron sometidos a desapariciones forzadas, torturas o tratos inhumanos, crueles o degradantes. Todos han sido de algún modo privados de un adecuado acceso a la justicia. Así lo reflejan diversas ONG y el más reciente informe de la Misión de Verificación de Hechos de la Comisión de Derechos Humanos de las Naciones Unidas. Por ende, es crucial la renovación de su mandato en Venezuela. Está claro que ninguna de esas tareas, de esas atrocidades, pueden borrar el hecho político fundamental que significó la derrota de la dictadura el pasado 28 de julio. Ese hecho invalida cualquier excusa que pueda presentar Nicolás Maduro para perpetuarse en el poder. El pueblo venezolano habló con total claridad. Nuestros presos políticos, que en la actualidad rondan los 2.000, son verdaderos héroes de la democracia y como tal hemos de honrarlos. Su sacrificio, así como el de millones y millones de venezolanos, no será en vano. Todos juntos haremos realidad el mandato del 28 de julio. Venezuela volverá a ser libre y a vivir en democracia.
Muchísimas gracias a todos por haber asistido y ahora están invitados a la exhibición que está en el salón de afuera. Thanks everyone for coming and now you are invited to the exhibit outside. Muchas gracias por venir.